Okay, we're recording.
Great. Welcome to the January 14th, 2026 Finance Subcommittee of the Brookline School Committee, Finance and Capital Subcommittee. We are going to adjust our agenda a little bit from the initially posted one. I think we're going to start with Susan's materials. So we'll start with the new position report and the second quarter report. And then we'll go back to the beginning of the agenda.
Great, and thank you for making this accommodation for me. I appreciate it. So since our last meeting, we've added 4 paraprofessional positions, one at Runkle, Hayes, Lincoln, and BHS. Those were all associated with student needs in those schools. Any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions from the subcommittee?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Where's the line that you're drawing where you're getting the 4 from, Susan?
Our last meeting in November, so I was just
okay.
speaking to December and
Okay.
January's entries.
Oh, I see. At the top 2, 4. Yeah, now it's bigger. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, we had ended up canceling our December meeting. So
Yeah, you're right. Okay, that's right. Okay, yeah, I get it. Okay, thank you.
Yep, that looks clear.
my question would be, except that you answer this in the Q2 report, how much, like what balance we have left. So I will not ask that question because you answer it in our next agenda item. So why don't we go ahead to Q2 report then?
Okay. Great. I'll just give you the highlights and then take whatever questions you might have. So at this time, we have an unencumbered fund balance or balance available of $3,560,474, which represents about 2.5% of our operating budget. This is typical for this time of year. Of course, this is a quarterly report that ends December 31st. So the second half of the year, many of the encumbrances have not hit the books yet. So I would anticipate, by the time we get to the Q3, the majority of this will have been spent, with the exception of salaries. So I'll speak for a moment about salaries. Again, this year we're trending very favorably. Right now we're under budgeted, under our budget by 787,000, which just represents 0.63% of our salary accounts. You might wonder, how does this occur? It occurs because when we fill positions, the placeholder that I'm carrying in the budget might be higher than what we hire the person who's coming in to fill the position. Or the other breakage component is we go unfilled in some positions throughout the year. So we might have a paraprofessional position that's open, and until we can get it filled, there's a certain amount of money that accumulates. Likewise, if we have an administrator who leaves, and then it takes 8 or 12 weeks to fill the position, then we accumulate a certain amount of money in our salary accounts. So this is good news because those of you who have been here know that we have been running in the negative for the last couple of years in salary. So it's refreshing to be sitting here running a positive variance in this area. So to date, through the end of Q2, we have added 14.2 new positions. 5.2 were funded by eliminating or what we call realigning positions. 2 were grant funded and 7 were funded from extra sections. So at this point in time, again, the end of December, that left us with 1 professional FTE section, or that is the equivalent of 2 paras that are available to us for the remainder of the year.
Well,
Can I ask a question, Susan?
Sure.
Yeah.
Just the 14.2, so that only includes it doesn't include the two paras that were added in January, or it does it? I haven't gone back to add up all the fractional FTEs.
It includes everything including the report that you're seeing here today.
Okay, so even though it's a Q2 report, it's including January too.
Yeah, because those happened, it's our January report, but they were already implemented in December.
Got
So I
it.
included them, yeah.
Thank you.
Susan, what does it mean by using extra sections? 7 were funded using extra. When I saw that, I was like, what is that? How do I understand what that means?
Yeah, so during the budget process, we changed our methodology for how to approach addressing variances in staffing needs. Of course, when we're preparing the budget, we're giving you our best plan based on what we know now. But inevitably, when the year opens, the landscape looks a little bit differently, and then we shift staff around. This year, to bring about a higher level of transparency, we funded 5 FTE in professional positions and 2 FTE in paraprofessional, so that when these situations arose, we could, whenever possible, of course, realign positions. So in other words, we collapsed a kindergarten position and then we added a second grade position, let's say. That would be a realignment. Or if we didn't have any opportunity to realign positions, then we would use extra sections. So those sections were set aside in the budget, knowing that throughout the year, if we're budgeting incredibly tight with our staffing, that there is going to be situations that we can't forecast in our minds at the time we're preparing the budget that we're going to need to address during the year. So that's what the extra sections are. They reside in the A&F section of the salary budget. And then when we make these allocations to the schools, then the expense will show up in the schools, and I'll release the money out of the operating budget in the A&F budget.
Right. So would another word like be like reserved or like if needed sections? Is that the kind of thing? These are like placeholder sections that don't really exist yet, but as the year goes by, if you need to bring in a person, FTE or some combination, you utilize these reserved placeholders. Is that sort of what it is?
I guess sort of, but think about it this way, Jesse. We're preparing a budget before we create let's say, the high school schedule.
Right. Okay.
So when I'm preparing the budget, I can't say with all specificity that I'm going to need X number of sections in English for certain. So what we do is we budget to the extent that we can, and then we set aside extra sections. So when the student enrollment hits, they're not sitting in English and then moving it there. We sit in the extra sections. And then when the sections shake out, then we allocate it to the appropriate place.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. That makes sense. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All righty. I had covered the ESY and the Title I reallocations in the first quarter report, so I'm going to slide over that tonight. So that's not really new information, but it does explain when you're looking at the statements, some of the changes and the deficits that you might see there. So we're going to move on to the operating budget. So this is your non-salary highlights. Again, most of our unencumbered balance sits in the non-salary lines because I'm encumbering everything that I'm aware of on the salary side. It's a little bit different on the non-salary side because we don't place purchase orders for an entire year at the beginning of the year. So we'll enter into, let's say, second semester at the high school. So during the month of January and February, typically you would see the ordering for those courses coming on our books in January and February. So it's not uncommon to see, this amount of money available in the supply lines because we're not even halfway through the school year when we hit December 31st. So it's good. I mean, we're not in deficit. I feel pretty comfortable that that will be sufficient to cover our expenses. And if there's a couple of hot spots that I want to point out that we're kind of monitoring. I'll talk to you about that next. So the first one I called attention to in the first quarter report, and this is for PDP. We had cut our memberships and our training back significantly during the budget process. And in fact, we cut it back too far. And so when you look at the statements, you'll see that we're running a deficit of 57,574, and that is because there are essential training needs and or memberships that we omitted when we made the cuts that we had to restore. So the deficit in that area is running at, like I said, just south of 58,000 at this time. That will probably rise just a little bit more before the end of the year, but I wanted to call that out. We'll have money in other lines that are favorable, and that will help us to close the deficit in this line. The other area that's a bit of a hot spot and has been for us is transportation. And of course, I reported in the first quarter that we were seeing an uptick in McKinney-Vento students, and that I would be making the adjustments to the financials in this quarter to accommodate those additional transportation needs that we're seeing. We also added the shuttle bus for the Lawrence School because our routes were running too long, and the population taking buses at that particular location increased, actually doubled, and has remained consistent since then. So those were both unanticipated. And then, as you know, when we closed last year, by the end of the year, we were kind of upside down again in our special education transportation. We had estimated for FY26 based on what we knew about this time last year. However, the numbers were a bit higher. So we're running a little over in special education transportation at this time, and we're looking at different ways that we can consolidate routes to bring that number down. So that number hopefully will look a little bit better by the time we get to the third quarter report. And then last, I called out that we had missed the budget for the copier leases during our first quarter report. That was about $240,000. The good news is as we were reconciling accounts, we found that we double counted health services, professional services, both in the OSS and then the health services professional service lines. And so we double budgeted 450,000. So that gives us sufficient funds to cover the copier deficit. So we're, we're glad that there will be no appreciable changes to our spending plan or our educational programs necessary to cover the costs of the leases that we had missed. So that is the operating side. Any questions there?
Why don't we pause there and we'll take a question from Sarah and then Jesse, and then I have a question. Go ahead, Sarah.
Just a clarifying question. Susan, and I wanted to make sure that I understood correctly. When you say special education transportation, you mean only within Brookline?
When I say special education, it's a combination of out of district and
Okay.
in district. But
I
what we're
wanted to know.
looking at is route consolidation in district.
Okay,
To
thank
see
you.
if we can do better there. Mhm.
Okay, Jesse?
Yeah, Susan, a question, just a little, if Betsy could scroll back towards the top of this section. Yeah, right there. So this 12.5% of the budget, I've been sort of floating in my mind for some time now, this $22 million, which was the total of the $22 million of non-salary expense, which was the part that was in the budget book. So I went back and I looked at your first quarter report that you gave us back in November, and this 17,787.93 shows up there as well. So that I just want to clarify, confirm for myself that the 22 million that was originally in the FY26 budget looks like it got decreased by $5 million of expense, got taken out when the FY26 budget was finalized. Because when I go back to March or April, when we had the vote on the FY26 budget at the 142 million, it doesn't list there. I went back and read all the slides again. I couldn't find the 22 million or the 17 million. So I just want to I want to confirm this is the actual non-salary expense side that we're looking at for this year.
Yes.
Okay, so my next question is, if we take the warrants that we're signing off on every week from the beginning of this fiscal year through December 31st, it comes out somewhere in the range of about $12 to $13 million that's been expensed so far for FY26. Again, it's possible some of the early ones in July were the last fiscal year. I don't know I couldn't get at the detail. But if so at $13 million or so that's been spent, just under that so far, against the 17 million, and we're only 20.
Not against the 17 million, Jesse. You have the things that we sign off on aren't just the operating budget. They're grants, they're other special revenue funds, they're everything.
Correct.
So the total expense would be other items that can be added into this 17.7 million, Mariah, other than just this number.
Like, for example, the Metco grant, if they buy supplies and they get charged against the Metco grant, we sign off on those. Any of the,
Right.
you know, we sign off on out of district tuition, for example, because that's something that comes onto the warrant. And some of those are charged here and some of them are charged to circuit breaker. And we sign off on everything that
Comes through.
comes through that's non-salary, independent of revenue source.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Then the last section.
My question, sorry,
Oh,
my
sorry,
question
sorry.
was, is the fact that the $450,000 was budgeted twice, that's new information from this quarter, correct?
Yes,
Okay, because the 240 we'd heard about before. I guess my
Correct.
mind is a little bit blown that like it's possible to not find that. And I'm just curious if you could talk about how like $450,000 is double counted. It's a lot
Yep.
of money.
it is a lot of money. So if you remember last year and the year before for that matter, we never got an OSS budget. And so last year when we're going through this, we didn't have the detail that underpinned the numbers that were there with any level of specificity. When Karen started, she and I&Z attempted to put together a budget that included all expenses. And in the process of doing that, we counted it in two different segments. And so as we've gone through and issued contracts and everything, and we were reconciling back to see what was left open for this year to better understand the variance, we caught this. And we were surprised as well, but under the gun without any, kind of grounding information. When we went through the budget last year, we wouldn't have been able to find this easily without having gone through the exercise of putting together the detail there. So it was in the health lines, but then in an effort to not miss any contracts this year, we merged everything into the OSS, but we had left those over there in that budget as well.
Okay.
Yeah. It's helpful for FY27, of course, with Karen here and all the work that has been done. We have clarity around the OSS budget, which is wonderful news.
So for the 27 budget, does this mean, since you've discovered this relatively recently, that we might had it already been stripped out of 27, or is that something that can now be removed from 27, thus increasing or decreasing the overall?
I had already taken this into consideration in my work, but I still have more work to do in order to give you your final numbers. So the good news is that though we missed the 240 in OTL, this kind of will, moderate the impact of that in the FY27 and then moving forward.
Thank you for the update.
Yep.
Okay, I think unless Karen, you want to say, I see you're there. If you want to say anything about this.
So no, I think Susan answered it. It's not, there's no double count in the FY27.
Well, it would have been great news if there were.
It would have been, yes. It would have been.
Some of this is in reconciling between the 2 years and putting the budget together. We're looking at current year expenses. We're looking at, next year in our forecasts. And as Bella has said, we're really scrubbing each and every number. And so this came to light and thought it was, important to report it and not hide it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jesse, go ahead.
Yeah, just quick clarification on the earlier discussion then, Susan. So if I scroll down way down in your document where the tables are and everything.
Yep.
there's a part that starts with all the Title I grants, and they're way past down there. Keep going, go. Yeah, keep going. Yeah. So these expense lines that are budgeted then, like the Perkins, the Metco PAC, enhanced school health, are all those the balance of the non-salary expenses then? Everything on this list, the federal, the state, and the revolving funds? Does
The
that,
ex- the expense on the special revenue fund is all in expense, not separating out salary from non-salary. So in the special revenue report, we show you the revenue per fund, and then we show you the total expense that was approved for that particular grant in this case. So expense does not mean non-salary. It means all expenses associated with the grant.
okay, so it could
Okay.
include salary. Got
Yeah.
it.
Jesse, there are also some other little funky accounts that we don't ever necessarily see. Like sometimes you'll see them referenced on the warrant, like the VHS photo account, and it's like basically money that's come back from the photography, and then it turns into, and it's like very small amounts, and then they charge certain things to it. So there's even these other small accounts, which
Sure, got it.
yeah.
Yeah,
Thank
like your lost book account. Yeah, things like that. It's money in, money out, the reimbursement for certain expenses.
Thank
So,
you.
Yep. Okay, so speaking of special revenue funds, we closed, as we had noted in the last report, we closed an additional 5 funds during the Q2 timeframe. And so that's in addition to the 21 that we closed in the first quarter. So that is significant progress on spending down our grants timely. And so what you'll see on this report is that all of the grants that we have open right now are either 25 or 26 grants. So that's awesome. When I started, you had 3 or 4 years of grants open simultaneously. And so we have done a significant amount of work over the last couple of years to close those grants out, use the funds, and then stay current with both applying for grants and managing them so that we're spending them down in a timely fashion. So that's good news. 3 kind of areas I wanted to focus on in this quarterly report. We looked at some of our fee-based programs and the revenue there. Of course, BASE, I had reported that unfortunately, by the close of BASE, there was about a $30,000 deficit.
Can you go up, Betsy, a little bit? Up a little more.
One
There
more.
you go.
There we
Yep,
go.
right there.
So, yep, the BASE program closed in deficit, and we've had to pay that $30,000 worth of expenses. Obviously, there's no money there, so we had to fund those through the operating budget. So those bills have now been paid. We're hoping that that's the end of the bills that will be coming in for BASE. And so I wanted to make sure that you were aware that we had finished processing those payments, so the BASE revolving fund is now closed.
Can I ask 2 questions? Can I make a question, ask a question, and make a comment? One, the question is, I know revolving funds have to be approved by town meeting to be established now. Is there any sort of formal vote or anything that needs to be taken to close a revolver? Or do you just decide it's closed and that's okay?
When I say it's closed, it's that it's not going to show up on our books, but that doesn't mean that we don't have the authority in the future to start a program again, since we have the authorization to do so.
Okay, so it essentially just goes inactive for
Yeah.
now.
And so
Okay,
this will happen too, like with material fee, the segment of the Mass General Law that enables us to collect non-resident tuition. We call ours material fee. We already have the authorization to set up a non-resident tuition account. So when Karen talks later on about tuition-based programs that we might be introducing next year, we've already have the authority to set up a non-resident tuition account. So that would be an example of we don't need to go to town meeting to get that because we already have the authority to do so. So you don't have
Okay.
to keep going back and forth and back and forth. Once you have the authority, you have the authority.
And then the second thing I just wanted to say was that to the school committee members, I had forwarded an email that I'd received from Tim Davis, the Director of Recreation, giving us an update on how the transition to rec is doing. And I believe he's coming to full school committee to share a report next Thursday. So it's not just about base closing and deficit, it's about that programming doing well in rec, and we'll hear about that next week.
That was good.
That's good to hear. Okay, the second highlight is BEEP, and I have talked about this a number of times. Now you're seeing it on the statements that we're going to receive less revenue than we had forecasted in the budget. And that is because we consolidated those classrooms. And so we have fewer seats. We talked about this when we were talking about the enrollment report a couple of months ago. And so now this translates into fewer seats that we can offer and receive tuition for. So our forecast is off by about 190,000. The expenses are a little bit higher as well, but there is sufficient funds in the fund balance to cover the variance should it remain at 105 by the end of the year. So it's nothing to be overly concerned about. We'll course correct on our forecasting of revenue for FY27. The next item is awesome news. And that is, of course, I reported that we received $607,145 in unanticipated circuit breaker revenue in July. And that was associated with more reimbursement for transportation in FY25. So actually it was a 25 reimbursement that we received in July and is showing up on our books now. But an even bigger number is as a result of us getting a higher amount this year for reimbursement for our students that we're submitting for reimbursement. So it's 810,000 to 79. Usually in the last quarter, they'll do some reconciliation. So there is an outside chance that number might get a little bit bigger, although it might just remain at the 810. So this means that of the 1.9 million that was our initial structural gap at the beginning of the year, we've been able to recover 1.4 million in revenue through the circuit breaker fund. So that is awesome. So
does that increased amount reflect a greater reimbursement rate or reflect increased expenses that we submitted to get a greater reimbursement?
Increased amounts that we submitted.
So doesn't it end up being that we're net negative on it, or it's because this is all prior year? This is prior year, so it's the reimbursement for 26 is based on 25 expenses.
No, the reimbursement this year is based on what we're submitting for reimbursements now.
But then how is it a positive thing if we're getting 810,000, but I'm making this up, it required us to expend an additional 1.2 million. I don't know what the exact ratio of
So
doesn't that actually mean we're further in deficit if we're
No,
getting a greater circuit breaker?
No, because we budgeted for the increased tuitions.
Oh, okay. So we already had these tuitions.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I guess that
Our
makes
tuition lines are fine overall this year so far.
So then why did our circuit breaker, I thought we knew the rate of reimbursement. So why was it greater than we anticipated?
It's not anticipated. So when I put the budget together,
Yeah.
right, the amount of money that we received last year is what I use this year because I don't know what the reimbursement's going to be.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Right. I don't know what the reimbursement's going to be. So I level them just like all the other special revenue funds. I don't make
The
it.
rate is higher than what we expected because
We
you
have
had
more-
forecast a certain amount of special out of district expenses and you had forecast a certain circuit breaker, but this circuit breaker is higher.
Yes.
Okay.
So we had budgeted in the current year budget a higher level of tuitions that we were going to pay this year. When we went and we are submitting and filing claims, the claims are obviously higher because the tuitions we're paying are higher. But when I'm budgeting this time, at this time of year, I only know what the tuition is right now. I don't know what next year's tuition is going to be. I don't know if they're going to change the amount. If rates are going to adjust, we don't know that. This is good news.
Great.
And it's,
Thank you.
and I will say this is attributed to Karen and her due diligence again in making sure that we're filing claims for everything that we're eligible for. That helps too. So great
Great.
job, OSS.
Yay. Sarah, go ahead.
That was all very helpful. I was going to ask a question similar to what Mariah was asking, and I'm just trying to really make sure that I understand everything with circuit breaker. So again, back to transportation. Does out-of-district transportation get claimed to circuit breaker only, or does in-district special ed transportation also go there?
I think my understanding of circuit breaker is that any expenses over a certain dollar threshold, and I'm not sure what the dollar threshold is right now. Karen, do you know what the dollar threshold is off the top of your head? You can seek reimbursement for.
I don't know the dollar threshold for transportation.
Yeah. I
The
don't know it off the top of my head.
And when you're calculating
Transportation.
that can be transportation for out of district as well as for within Brookline.
Yeah, it's any
Yes.
expenses we have over a certain dollar threshold, you can
Yeah.
seek reimbursement for.
Okay.
And that's both circuit breakers. So both circuit breaker is is in-district students and out-district students on both accounts, both for transportation and for the general circuit breaker claim.
Great.
I think Sarah is asking this question. There was a time when they introduced reimbursement for special transportation through circuit breaker. There was a time when they did not allow you to include in-district special transportation. So I think that's why Sarah's asking that question. So I do want to make sure that that's the question she's asking. And so they may have removed that restriction. Does that make sense? Okay, so maybe we have to come back with an answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's probably something I can look up myself as well, but I'm just trying to really make sure that we follow this closely. So thank you.
Yep.
So that's great. So the large structural deficit, like as you said, the gap of the salary running positive, and this means that large gap that we borrowed against future year circuit breaker is essentially gone. Am I interpreting this right?
You're interpreting it right.
Can I ask
That's assuming everything, nothing else happens in the second half of the year that's unanticipated or big, but I don't see that. I feel pretty good about the financial position we're in right now.
So does this financial position we're in assume that we will have access to the funds that were deferred for the Lincoln Playground project or not? Because I guess my question is, those funds had been held in a separate account by Chaz, right? I think they'd been pulled out of the 26 CIP and held by Chaz. And at what point could we say comfortably that we don't necessarily need to ask them to hold those funds so that project could proceed? Maybe not perfectly on time with it wouldn't have started July 1st of 2025, but at least it could perhaps start earlier in the spring, the planning part of the playground, because I think that was what the $700,000 was for. Do you know what I'm
No,
talking about? Does this
I
make
do.
sense?
I
Okay.
know exactly what you're talking about.
Good.
Yeah. And I don't see at this point in time that we're going to need to access any additional resources from the town.
May I ask so the thought was they were holding that in case we would have needed it for operating expenses for FY26. Is that
Right, that's the idea. It wasn't going to be reallocated into PSB's budget, but it also wasn't spent against the Lincoln Playground project. It was held in some, I don't know where it was held, some account
I see.
in sort of limbo.
There is some question about what the town allocation can be possibly to to the schools for FY 27. So I just want to hold that thought if that's part of the flexibility for FY 27. And
I
I
don't
don't,
think it is because I think these were this was 26 funds that
all
were,
right.
yeah.
So I just want, before we are excited about this, I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Of course.
Carol, I see your hand is up. Go ahead. Oh, I don't know if you can go off of mute. Do you need to do something, Betsy, to take her off of mute?
We really can't have other members.
She's not a member of this subcommittee.
I'm sorry. Oh, Carol, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I was looking at other names here. Sorry about that. When I'm sharing the screen, it's hard to also see the name, so my apologies.
Did you figure it out? Do you want me to do something? I think I can.
No, I just did it.
can
Carol, you should be
talk.
able to unmute now.
Okay. Go ahead, Carol.
Mariah, my recollection was that that money for the Lincoln Playground was held back in part because of the repair and maintenance budget being cut. And it was sort of they went hand in hand. I don't remember all the details, but it was related and in direct response to the schools cutting the original repair and maintenance contribution. So I think there's probably more conditions about spending that money on the Lincoln Playground than just not needing to come to the town for additional money.
Well, why don't we take up an action item to follow up on this offline to get clarity on
That would be
point you're
great.
raising and so on. And I think Charlie Young is here too. So I don't want to put him on the spot, but he also might know the answer. And when we get to his part next, we could maybe talk about that. Or again, just take it offline and we'll follow up. Sarah, I see your hand is up and I'm happy to call on you, but we don't need an advocacy moment for the Lincoln Playground unless you have something specific you want to add about this. So I'll let Betsy go ahead and ask you to unmute you. But certainly I think your email earlier today was helpful to continue to keep an eye on that. Betsy, do you want to offer or
Sarah, you should be able to unmute now.
Thanks. Oh, okay. So yes, I raised my hand before you said, let's talk to Charlie and see if we can get clarification on the funds. So I am happy to do that and just say thank you. And Bella, too late. I'm already excited, but I will, I will go ahead and remute myself. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, why don't we keep going on Q2? If there's anything else we want to, I would really appreciate, Susan, if we could go to, I think it's the next page, because I still am puzzled on how to interpret these revolving or the special revenue funds. It's not the next page. If you can keep going, Betsy, like maybe page 7 or something like that. Keep going. Yeah, this. So why what does it mean that, for example, FY 25 has a different, I don't understand how to interpret the fact that the expense is listed as 28,000, but then the spent column under revenue there's a spent revenue as opposed to expense, which is different. I'm puzzled. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, this is kind of an accounting kind of issue, I would say. And so when we close the fiscal year, if we have not received reimbursement for the expenses from the prior fiscal year, then it shows up as part of the revenue we're going to collect this year. And so this is the way that that is acknowledged. On the expense side, we sought reimbursement in the prior fiscal year, so the expense went through, but we couldn't. So on federal grants, what happens is that you have to draw down your revenue. So you have to spend the money in order to draw down the revenue. And so there's a misalignment when you cross fiscal years between revenue and the expense. So I understand that it can be a little confusing. I don't like having to present it this way, but this is the way The special revenue funds are set up in Munis right now. And so the revenue that we have access to in fiscal 25 is 87,000. I'm just using the first one as the example. And the expense, though, is only 28,000 because we are already sought reimbursement. We just didn't receive the revenue. That's kind of what happened with the circuit breaker 607. Like if, and I tried to explain it the last time because you're getting really into different accounting rules, which makes it a little bit confusing. But they're using, the town uses what's called a cash basis of accounting. Most or many school districts use a modified accrual basis so that you don't have misalignment in your reporting. But the town of
But
Brookline.
can I make a little bit of a request? Because like I'm someone who professionally works in the space and like I have an MBA, and if I don't understand this and this is meant to be a public facing document, to me there's like a problem. So I would really appreciate if we can like figure out a way to report this that's more friendly to like the lay reader, if you will.
Yep.
Thank you. Are there other questions or comments on the document before we go ahead and move on? Jesse, Sarah? Okay. I think we will say thank you so much, Susan, for the great news that you gave us and for the detailed reporting. And we will move ahead to the next items on the agenda.
Always nice to have a lot of information. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's really great to see it all coming together in the budgeting work and the things breaking our way. It's great. I hope it holds for the next 2 quarters as well. The next item on the agenda, I think we're going to go back to the beginning of the agenda, and let me pull that back up for myself. So I think our first item is, sorry, my computer's.
I'll just let Mr. Simmons know. I had told him about the change, so maybe if we're going to go to
Perfect.
Charlie Young first, if you want to.
Well, we have to do minutes in the applications, and
Oh.
then we'll come back to them really quickly.
Very
So
good,
we've
okay.
got a couple of minutes. Yeah.
All right.
So first item is approval of the November 12th, 2025 minutes. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Sarah, do you second? You do. Okay, Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah? Yes, and I vote yes as well.
Laura,
Next.
I'm here and I
Oh,
vote
hi,
yes.
Donna.
Hi.
Hi,
Sorry, I
Donna.
didn't see you. I didn't see you. That's okay. Welcome.
And sorry,
Thank you.
Mariah,
I vote yes.
Oh, great. Okay.
Mariah was calling something up on my computer, so I vote yes. Thanks
No,
for.
I saw the thumbs up. That's perfect. And then the next item on the agenda is the Metco transportation grant. Betsy, were you able to replace the packet online? I don't know
Yes,
if
I did.
everyone saw that there was more content backing this request up than was originally shared with us. So I had just asked Malcolm a little bit more, but then I read the backup and found it helpful as well. But my understanding from Malcolm, let me just go find the email because my questions were, I asked about, it said the total budget expenditure for 26 was 483,000, and I just wasn't clear if that was the state's budget for the supplement or the PSB Metco transportation budget. He clarified it was for the transportation budget. And I asked if we were projected to overspend the transportation allocation. If so, by how much? He said we won't overspend. We're still within our spending. And essentially, he's requesting the maximum of 25,000 that is allowed. And then if they get support for the transportation funding, they will rebudget to push funds into student support activities. And I think Malcolm couldn't join us tonight because he had a conflict. Are there any other questions or comments from the committee about this? 25,000?
No.
Okay, I will make a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll
Sure.
second.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take Jesse's a second. Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Donna?
Yes.
And I vote yes. And then the next item on the agenda, we have 4 gifts. There is a gift from the Boston Bruins for $3,000 to Baker School, a gift from the MLVV Goldstein Memorial Fund for $5,000 to Baker School, a gift from the David E. Boundy 2020 Revocable Trust for $100 to the High School Winthrop House program, and a gift from David Kaufman for $1,000 to the High School Queer Student Union. Thank you very much to the donors of those gifts. Much appreciated, and especially meaningful, the Goldstein family gift, which is, of course, very meaningful to the community at Baker. Are there any questions on any of the gifts? If not, I'll
Actually,
take.
Tim,
Go
sorry,
ahead,
can I
Lynn.
ask you a quick question? And maybe this is more general, but
Mhm.
if there was a specified use for the gift, so in other words, if we were limited in how those funds were applied beyond just Winthrop House, for example,
Mhm.
it would be included in the information that we were given, right?
Right, the restrictions that are listed are specified.
Okay, wonderful.
Yeah. Although I would say that the Baker one, it says the team is earmarked. I don't believe that the gift itself has that restriction, but I believe the Goldstein Memorial Fund gift is restricted for the purpose you see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I will make a motion to approve with gratitude the 4 gifts that we have. Do I have a second?
Yes.
Second, yeah,
Okay, thank you, Jesse. Donna, how do you vote?
yes, thank you.
Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Thank you. And now we will go back to section 4 of the agenda. Oh no, sorry.
I think you
Back
wanted
to
to go back
section
to
2
yeah,
of
two.
the agenda, which is Charlie Simmons here?
Yes, he is. Yep.
Oh, great. I don't see him.
Yeah, he's there. He's at like 8 or 9 down from the top, 7 from the top.
Okay. I meant I literally didn't. There you are. Hi, Charlie.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks for joining us. So you're going to talk about the request that you submitted on December 23rd for services personnel. So I guess
Yes,
we'll
thank
take it over
you.
to you. Thanks for coming.
You're welcome. So yes, I was looking for an increase in repair and maintenance money, and I'm also looking to add a couple more staff members. The increase in the repair and maintenance money is two-part. I'd like to get the monies that were cut from this fiscal year's budget and add additional to that with an increase of 4% or 4.5% for inflation. Last year we did cut the budget, and I have been cutting back on things such as not washing windows, and I'd like to put that stuff back into the budget. The second item that I'd like to talk about is hiring 2 non-licensed HVAC personnel. This came up a year and a half ago, and on the town side, we did hire a person, and it's been very successful. And this person primarily takes care of replacing filters and belts and so on that we were subcontracting out. He also helps do some HVAC repairs that do not require a license and troubleshooting, which has been very, very helpful. And I'd like to apply that on the schools because I think it would be better for the schools as far as response time and services, and save us a little bit of money. That about summarizes it.
Charlie, we didn't get a breakdown of the salary request, correct? Like you gave us the dollar amount for the services, but not for the salaries, correct?
Oh, correct.
Okay. Charlie Young, I know you sent earlier a different spreadsheet, which does include salaries, but the salaries you sent, and I don't think anyone else has received this. This came by email earlier, but those salaries are not incorporated, like the additional staffing that Charlie Simmons is requesting for is not in the document you sent, correct?
That is correct. That's just steps for the existing folks that are in the school portion of the building department budget. Now, I will say this is just a flag because I think we decided to adopt this idea because it came with a promise of some savings. This year we did not fund an increase in building department personnel to hire the non-licensed HVAC person. We sort of came to an agreement with Charlie that we would fund that with a transfer out of R&M because it's designed to save more money than it costs to hire that person. So that's just a flag. We didn't actually increase the budget yet to account for that. And when we do, we're going to take it out of R&M and put it into personnel.
And is the net savings, that's in the memo, which it says 75 to 85 per year, is that for the two people together, or is that each person, Charlie?
The two people together.
Okay. So you were assuming around 40,000 for the single HVAC tech, like a net savings of 840 for the single HVAC tech from this year?
Approximately, yeah.
Okay.
Can you just remind me how last year worked out?
Regarding,
The same, the HVAC.
well, we hired a person they didn't start until February. Had to go through a process, obviously. The person has most of the qualifications to have a license. He hasn't had all his time in, and he hit the ground running. We had to get up to speed because now we had to start buying air filters and scheduling things. So that took a little bit of time, but we've worked out all the problems such that we don't have to go into a building and shut down a building or anything or work odd hours. And we're doing well. We're doing really well with it. And he's got into every single town building more than once now. And we're going to continue to do that. And as I mentioned, we're expanding the scope a little bit to help us with other HVAC stuff that sometimes is just very minor.
And the budget compared to the actual spent, where did we end up?
Well, I haven't finished the year yet, and he started in February, so it's hard to compare apples to apples right now. I'll have a better idea at the end of June, actually, for one full year.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Charlie Young, hang on, Donna. I have a question because when I look at the spreadsheet that you sent, Betsy, do you mind pulling it up for a minute? Because you got it too, right, Betsy?
Yes, there were a few though, so let me stop sharing.
It's the one you sent at 3.
Okay.
I can also pull it up if need be.
Oh, if you don't mind, maybe that would be easier so that she doesn't have to lose her spot in all the documents.
Yes, just give me one moment.
Sure. I'm
Thank
just
you,
trying to
Charlie.
understand because the dollars that I saw in your spreadsheet don't match the dollars that I saw in Charlie's.
Yeah, there are
Yes.
different ways to run these reports. And to be honest with you, Mariah, Melissa sent me the request that you had emailed this afternoon,
Yeah.
and I just jumped right on it and pulled a couple of reports. So when you're saying they don't match up, let's figure out what that number is, and maybe we can try to make them jive.
Yeah.
It may just have to do with whether or not Charlie or I counted prior year encumbrances. Like, for example, when we talk about the FY25 actual spend, that's what's been recorded. We do carry some purchase orders into the next fiscal year and spend them down. So there could be some expenses that haven't been made yet. And I think Susan was alluding to this earlier, that it is actually difficult sometimes to put those in their correct fiscal year. So which numbers are you seeing? Is it the services line item
Yeah, it was
here?
the services line because I think Charlie has 35, 38 for 26 in his memo. Am I right, Charlie? Now I'm not looking at the memo either.
Yes. And so what's happening there is they have, so this services, I just gave you basically a roll up by category of accounts.
Mhm.
And so under this line item, there's more than just R&M. There's another smaller account. So I'm gonna jump to another tab here. So just bear with me. It's a bit of a blizzard of numbers, but I will zoom in and try to make it easier to follow. So this is something maybe to look at more closely offline, but this is the FY26 column. This is what we're planning for FY27. This is the building maintenance line item, and there is that 3.538 number that we were just talking about Charlie having in his spreadsheet. And that's what we have as well. And we're assuming a 2.5% growth in that for now. It looks like this right here, maybe this 1250 and maybe one or two other line items make up the difference between the 538 and this 544.
Got it.
They're very
So-
small, repair line items that are separate from the R&M account.
So when you have, if you don't mind just keeping this view up for a moment. So you
Sure.
have 3633, which as you said is the 2.5% increase, but Charlie is requesting 30, sorry, Charlie, I can't. 3943, 395. So that's 310,000 more than what is in the current projection that feeds. And I'm sort of talking through this a little bit for everyone else who's listening so that they can maybe follow along with what's, I'm also confirming it for my understanding, but also making sure there's a shared understanding. So essentially, if we were to go along with the 3943, we would then be essentially transferring 310,000 of the allocation that's currently in the PSB bucket back to the town bucket. So we would be increasing our projected deficit.
That is correct. I will say, well, I shouldn't speak out of turn. We should look at what we have in the forecast for an assumption for growth of school costs within the town budget. Utilities came in a little bit lower than I had originally projected and what we built into the forecast, but we should confirm with Melissa before I promise any real savings there. Just to make sure we, I don't want to promise anything there, but utilities came in a little bit lower for FY27 than I had initially projected.
And when we have 54,000 for capital that you're allocating, is this a car? Are we getting
It
a
is.
car every year?
That is an annual purchase of a vehicle. And to be perfectly clear, last year, in order to meet the deficit, the town cut their this line item on the town side of the building department for vehicle replacement every year. So that, and in FY26 and likely in FY27, there won't be funds on the town side of the building department to purchase a car.
So the schools has funded it for 26 for the building department.
Correct.
Okay, so if there is a car needed, doesn't it seem like it should come from the town side of the ledger and not the school side of the ledger?
So these are cars that are being used by school repair and maintenance, school staff to go out to school buildings. That makes sense. So in other words, there's in the building department, they have line items for town accounts for town buildings, and they have line items for school accounts for school buildings. There was, as of last year, one vehicle on each side, and the town chose to reduce its vehicle.
Charlie, do we need to fund this vehicle for 27? Like, is it a
I'd
true
love
need?
it. Personally, because they're great vehicles. It's all electric. They're newer. And my fleet is getting older. We haven't been keeping up. Not that that's anybody's issue, but we haven't been keeping up getting newer vehicles. So they are getting in tough shape. And the two that we have, my tradesmen are very satisfied with them. They've been working out really well, and we've had no issues with them at all.
But how could we only have two cars if we funded a car for 26, 25, and 24, and possibly earlier back than that?
Charlie can present a vehicle schedule and the age of all the vehicles that the building department has access to. Part of the reason that we chose to reduce our line item for FY26 is at least one of the vehicles we needed to replace, we were able to do through ARPA temporarily. And so I think we did the same. I think, Charlie, we purchased multiple building department vehicles through ARPA. I think it may be worth following up to look at the age of the vehicles, as Charlie is saying they're old. But again, just offering that up that we made that reduction on the town side this year.
Okay, Donna, go ahead, and I see you have your hands up. You're on mute.
Sorry, I'm having technical difficulties and I'm about to lose my mind on Storo Drive. So I wanted to ask, going back to Sarah's question so that I'm totally clear, with regards to the hiring of the like an internal HVAC person, on the town side, are you on track to realize the savings that you had anticipated?
Well, as I said, I never finished. He started the fiscal year
Right.
late, and I am in 6 months into this fiscal year. We do look better, but I'm mixing HVAC because I hired outside contractors, so I have to pull out just the portion that we spent on filters and what I've been buying filters on. It looks good, but I don't want to promise anything right now. And ballpark, though, the numbers have to be better because I'm paying much less for labor. And even if I'm paying the same amount for filters, we have to be doing better. So, but
And
I'd
so
like to
can I
point
ask,
out,
yeah,
oh, go
go
ahead.
ahead, I'm sorry. No,
No,
please, Charlie.
I'd like to point out that in addition to doing filters and belts, he is doing other HVAC work that I would be hiring an outside contractor for. So I think the savings might be even higher because we haven't been using the outside contractors much. And again, that's more simple things, but they do pop up from time to time.
And then on the school side, it would be, if I'm remembering correctly, it's 2 positions, not 1, is that right?
Yes.
So is the reason it's 2 on the school side because of because of the number of buildings? So there's more volume of work?
The square footage is about twice. It's 66%, 33% if you add up all the square footages, the buildings as more complicated as the town side. So it's just the balance of the two.
Right. And then my last point of clarification was when you said I think you had said $80,000 in projected savings. That's after salary? So after we
Yes.
account for salary? Okay, got it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So if we were to go ahead and do that kind of thing, would it be the same kind of thing like Charlie Young described, where it would basically be like a side deal where you hire them and then you transfer as needed out of the services line?
Yeah, exactly.
So we wouldn't need to increase personnel. We could theoretically just net it out of services of whatever the ultimate services line ends up becoming. Is that correct?
It is, but you're presuming that I'd have a person or persons on board July 1st. And I can't necessarily say that it'll happen. Strange things happen with hiring. Not to belate it, but I'm probably on year 8 or 9 where I've had 3 open licensed HVAC positions that I still have not been able to fill. So,
But do you feel like the HVAC tech because this person is a all but licensed situation, right? You said, so is that an easier hire, do you think? Because they
it
don't
is.
carry the license?
Definitely
Okay.
is. Yeah.
Okay, great. Just in terms of like hourly rate or salary or whatever, the town can afford to be the town is more competitive, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions from the subcommittee? One comment that I want to make, go ahead. Well, why don't you go ahead, Donna?
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say was I had asked, I had gone back to Charlie Simmons' report on the FY25 actuals that he'd given us in October, I think it was, which I think came in at an the actual expenditure on the services line of 3.4 million or so. Am I remembering right? I think so, 3.4 million, and asked why we couldn't work off the actuals, and then increase that. And I understand that last year we held the budget flat, so I certainly would not be just doing an increase over 25, but thinking about a multi-year increase over the actual spend from 25 rather than operating off of the 25 budget, which was, if you all recall, we held it flat for 26. It was flat, right? It's not flat on this budget, which I'm confused by.
Well, from what I understand, you cut it by $163,000 from last fiscal year.
But why does this one show a $200,000 plus? Am I reading your Charlie Young? Am I reading your spreadsheet right? G4 and H4?
Sorry, these are actual expenditures, not the budget. So what we're showing here is the FY26 budget. That's the current year.
Right.
Charlie is correct that
But
the
shouldn't have been well, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, 2.5% was around the same, was not that much different from this number as of last year. And so what was actually reduced it was not just level funded. Level funded would have been it was actually reduced below FY25 levels. I can pull that up. I can pull that number up.
So budget to budget, you're saying it was reduced, but it was more than the 25 actual. 26 budget is greater than 25.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. I think 25 budget obviously is greater than 25 actual. So it's I could pull that up, what the FY25 budget was. But it was actually a reduction from 25 to 26 to this number here. And I just want to add really quick, which is not disputing your offer to work off of actuals at all, Mariah, just pointing out that the whole reason we use this 2.5% is because the 2008 override built in a 2.5% increase into building repair and maintenance on the town and school side basically every year. And so the override added the funds to do that every year. It's obviously like last year you can make the decision to do something different, but that's the origination of the practice.
But most years, at least in recent memory, we've done much better than that. I mean, we have been trying to put funds into, we know that building maintenance in PSB has been underfunded. And for multiple years, except for last year, we were increasing it much greater than 2.5%. And so, I just want to make sure that it's clear that it's not like PSB is being chintzy on the 2.5% year to year. We have a much better history of this. And if we look at the funding from prior to 24, you'll see that it's increased tremendously because of the work that needs to be done by the building department, and which we appreciate. But I guess like the issue is, and I think you're alluding to this, Charlie Young, when the model only allows for a 2.5% increase every single year, we end up in this structural conflict where Charlie Simmons requests more than 2.5% because his costs are going up by more than that. And then we have to decide whether we're going to take it out of the student facing expenses or not do the maintenance. And so every year we have this, and I'm trying to say, is there some way we can, respect the work that Charlie and the team are doing, but going off of the actuals, but also reflecting the greater than 2.5% growth in costs that he has year to year. I'm trying to square the circle a little bit here, if you will. And it's just very challenging because otherwise every single year, like we are in the position of having to say no, because the model for the 2008 override identified this incredibly low number of 2.5% as the increase for his budget every year. So, I mean, I find it frustrating. It's no one here's fault, but I find it frustrating that, that we don't have the funds to do what we all think is right for the buildings to be maintained. Donna, go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to, sorry, going back to, well, first of all, Mariah, on what you just said, and I'm not sure that I followed all of it, but I think what I extracted was that you're suggesting that we use, for budget purposes, we use last year's actuals to build on versus the last year's budget numbers. Is that right?
Yes, I mean, and if there was some adjustment that needed to be made, if Charlie said, oh,
and Charlie Young, Charlie Young, you're essentially saying the reason it was built the way it's built is because of the override, right?
That's just where the practice.
Sort of yes, right. That's where it originated. Okay, got it. I just wanted to make sure I was following the conversation. My question is going back to the idea of the two additional positions.
Oh, did I lose you, or can you still hear me?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, so would there be any utility in talking about one position versus two? Or that's not even a scenario we should, like, is there any utility in discussing that scenario?
Why would we do less than that if we could save more? Like essentially, Charlie, like it can only result in savings as I interpret this.
Is that true?
There's no world in which Charlie hires a person and also hires the contractors. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? So.
Okay.
Whoa. Charlie Simmons, this is Carol. My recollection is that you're still going to need outside contractors because the people you're hiring are not licensed. And there's some things that these outside
Oh,
contractors.
yeah, sorry, Carol. I
Yeah.
didn't mean to imply for that, but just that the things like if it's the filter replacement, I just meant he's not gonna have to hire someone to do the work that they're doing.
Right, but I
Yeah.
also want to caution you that there's things that might not be getting done by the outside contractors because that budget is being used for maintenance. So you shouldn't be too quick to cut the outside service contract budget
I think
because,
that was clear. Charlie made that clear earlier.
okay,
Yeah. Right. He basically said, I can't necessarily hire them at the end of the beginning of the fiscal year and so forth. And he doesn't necessarily know if he can hire them at all. So we can't just net out the funds, was his point.
I'm not sure you understood what I was saying. There's there's that point, and also the point is that there's work that maybe won't get done or needs to get done that can only be done by the licensed contractors. So you can't,
Understood.
so some of those savings might have benefit in the outside service contract line item.
And just to add to that though, Carol, we do most years have savings in the salary line item where those positions, those licensed HVAC positions are vacant. And frequently we do a transfer out of personnel into R&M so that Charlie can do outside services contracted work on HVAC that those licensed HVAC personnel would be doing. We're talking about doing one of those transfers right now for around 100 grand in salary savings. So that there is there's more to it than just what's in the R&M funds when it comes to the licensed HVAC work.
So I guess what you're saying is it's not necessarily going to be a direct one-for-one reduction in that service contract because of those transfers from.
I'm just trying to say that there, where you say there's some work not getting done by the, not getting done because it's being spent on RM. We also transfer the salary savings from the vacant licensed HVAC folks into R&M so that Charlie can do more contracted licensed HVAC work.
So it's not necessarily one-to-one. It's a little bit more finesse. What you're saying is the impact on the budget.
Right, but there is real savings there. I guess the bottom line is there is real savings to be had to be made there. And I will just add for my part that I have talked to Charlie Simmons about this, and he does see sort of it would be generally more efficient if the town and schools aligned on the idea and the process here. So that it may work better with all three on board.
All three HVAC techs, you mean?
Non-licensed
Yeah,
HVAC, exactly.
We don't need to make a decision on this one tonight, right? We have some time, so we can flip over to utilities at this point. Is that reasonable?
Anything else you want to add, Charlie Simmons?
Yeah.
No, I'm fine. Sorry,
Okay.
I have to turn off my picture. I'm having a little baud rate issue here.
No
But that's
worries.
fine.
Thank you. Okay, Charlie, or which one of you is presenting utilities? Is it you, Charlie Young, or both?
Yeah,
of you?
I can pull it up and would love Charlie Simmons' help. So I forgot to introduce myself for anybody who doesn't know me. I'm Charlie Young. I'm the Assistant Town Administrator for Finance. And I help with doing some of our utilities cost projections. And we've provided the schools with our initial look at the utilities budget. I can explain what's going on there as soon as I can pull it up on my screen. And thank you, Mariah, for catching an error in my sheet. Very small, but still nice to get everything accurate. So
while you're doing that, just to confirm, the 3 licensed HVAC positions are also still in the budget, right? We would be talking about adding the non-licensed positions in addition, correct? Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Thanks.
Exactly.
Is it possible, like we've gotten in previous years, to get the breakdown of the, in addition to what we talked about with the vehicles, to get a breakdown of the staff titles and fractional FTEs that PSB is paying for?
Yes, absolutely. We didn't have time to produce that today.
Okay.
It takes a little bit more manual work looking the information up instead of just kind of pulling the reports.
Thank you.
I'll put that on the list. I think it may not hurt to have a reminder at some point if I don't get that to you. We're in budget book production mode.
Betsy, do you mind being the nudge?
Thank you. Please, thank you, Betsy. I appreciate that.
Not my favorite role, but I'll do it.
Well, I'll be nice about
it.
I'll be nice about it, Betsy. Okay. I'll try to remember. I put it on my to-do list. Okay. So, just a few quick notes. We have in the past had a significant reserve fund transfers to cover deficits in school utilities. And we've had lots of conversations about those in the past. But Charlie Simmons and I think have been able to align and get our estimates, you know, basically true them up in a better way. And last fiscal year, we did not end with a significant deficit, which was spectacular. And this year we are projecting currently, as is noted on the screen, a very small deficit of $100,000 or less. And as we can talk about as we go through this, that may be resolved as we investigate further. So what we do with utilities budgets across the town is we gather up the usage data and the cost data from all the departments, and we create a 3-year average of usage under each type of utility, and we multiply it by the expected utility price that we're going to pay that next fiscal year. So you can see right now we have a total budget of 3.7 million for school utilities in the building department budget. And I'll zoom in a little bit so this is easier to see in FY26. And we're making some changes here. As you can see, it looks like electricity prices are going up. There's some more information about this on the right side I can talk about. We are estimating an increase in units, an increase in kilowatt hours. This is really not a substantial increase, but it just reflects the potential $100,000 deficit that we're seeing. And natural gas is going up substantially. A lot of folks are seeing this on their bills. In both electricity and natural gas, the price increase is coming from mainly an increase in our supply contract price. That's a fixed contract. We settle every few years. We put out to bid and settle every few years. We've benefited from having very low, especially natural gas supply rates, which are going up substantially this year, much like folks in the community. So between the two, $113,000 increase in electricity is recommended, a $218,000 increase in natural gas is recommended. And then water is the next largest account here, which we're recommending a $50,000 increase to. Partly, almost entirely due to just increasing costs. The usage is actually estimated to be a little bit lower than the current year budget. So that is how we come up with our estimates. We do make some other assumptions, and I included those on the right side here. So we talk about these. There's two components to our utility prices: the supply I just talked about, and then delivery from the actual utility. We're assuming 3% increases over our current rates.
But Charlie, how could the budget be using 3-year averages of uses? Like, if you go back, do you mind just scooching back over?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so unless there was, and I can't, if you scroll a little further so we can see 25. I don't know what 24 was necessarily, but I guess it's over there, right? Or no, this is budget versus actual for 25.
Correct.
So
there's additional years, and so
there's a whole bunch of hidden stuff in there. Okay.
But just to be totally clear with you, just to be completely transparent with you, Mariah, this number, when we ran the 3-year average of units, came out lower than the current year budget. And as a result, because we're looking at a deficit this fiscal year, we decided to hold it at the 8.5, and then we added the kilowatt hours that are shown over here.
The 280.
Correct. And so this is not actually a 3-year average. And
I don't think it's 280. I think it's a different number. I think
fair enough.
It's
fair enough. It's an odd number, perhaps. Yes. Okay. And so, not trying to bury the lead or anything, we basically start with a 3-year average, and then we look at actual performance of the buildings and current year budgets and bills, and we make some assumptions after that. I do believe that natural gas ended up being just a 3-year average plus the therms that we discussed on the right. And so in any case, we did get an analysis from our outside energy consultant, Freedom Energy, that looked at our usage and our costs. We looked at that today. And it looks like we're pretty much aligned with where they think we're going to be in FY27 on our utility budgets, which was helpful and confirmed a lot of our assumptions. This seems like a substantial increase. In the grand scheme, it reflects, I think it's about a 10% increase, which is about what we're seeing in price increases. And so we talk about this with the community. Obviously we are budgeting for small increases in usage, the primary driver of the cost increases this year, much like a few years ago when we were running deficits, is cost increases. So that's basically what I have to present. Each of these numbers is a roll up of all of the buildings that you know the schools have in each of these categories. And Charlie Simmons does a great job with his energy manager tracking those buildings and giving us lots of data. And so for questions about specific buildings, I would need Charlie to jump in, but I can answer any questions about how we're doing the budget here. Oh, and I'm sorry, before I turn it over, just want to point out that this 382,563 right here increase ties out to the sheet that I showed you earlier, where we're showing the utilities category going up by 382,563. The percentages are off, I think, because the total might not be completely accurate on this one. There may be something wrong, maybe something off here. So this seems like it's a little higher than town meeting table. In any case, happy to take any questions on how we arrived at our assumptions and why we're recommending what we're recommending.
Can I ask a question about the units of electricity and just solar? So like, does this represent all of our electricity or the ones we've generated? Like, how does that work in terms of netting it out with our solar panels?
Yeah, absolutely. A great question. So for example, I think the Driscoll solar array, Charlie, could you jump on and talk about when that's going live? And I believe it is behind the meter. So you'll be realizing the savings directly on your bills. Where we would realize that is in the cost per unit. And so essentially what we do is we look at, for some departments, they run much lower than what we expect. And so instead of plugging in the exact dollar per kilowatt hour that we're expecting people to pay, we're plugging in an assumption based on how much lower they usually run than what we expect. If that makes sense. Hope that makes
It
sense.
does. I guess I'm wondering, like, because for some of the buildings, I would imagine we don't pay the supply surcharge, right? We just pay, or what do we pay what
You
are we
pay
paying?
both. You
We
pay
still
both,
have to
but
pay both, even though we're like, how does the solar reduce the cost? I
oh,
should
that is
know this, but I'm like completely about like I'm confused when it comes to this sort of level of calculation where it gets netted out.
right. And so, for example, if you had a net meter credit agreement, right, you would be seeing just dollar amounts on your bills. It wouldn't actually change your kilowatt hours. So you are identifying correctly that we're budgeting for the total amount of kilowatt hours. But when we look at what we're paying for a cost per unit, so for example, if I go back and look at the FY25 budget and how it turned out, what we expected folks to pay was 24 cents per kilowatt hour in FY25. And the schools actually ended up with 25 cents a kilowatt hour. And where that comes from is probably demand load charges, which are charges that occur when you flick on large power draining systems in your schools. And they can vary. And there could be other reasons why the cost is higher than anticipated as well. We could, in this fiscal year budget, have said, well, because you're already paying, 1 cent more than what we expect, we should budget you 1 cent above. But because we have a few things going on here, we have the Driscoll solar array coming up. We have some new net meter credit agreements coming on board. We're expecting to see some savings. And so I understand where you're coming from, Mariah. You'd like to see this on like a maybe building by building basis or a much more detailed
I
basis.
just want to save money, Charlie.
I understand.
I just
I
don't want us
understand.
to spend that much.
I understand.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can identify savings, we can factor them in here. I don't know what that looks like, whether it's like, oh, we're going to use the buildings one less day a week. I have no idea what that looks like, or we're going to try a new conservation measure. We can build that in with a reduction in units or even a reduction in cost if we think that's what it's going to be. Unfortunately, much like a few years ago, these are just real increases in costs that we're seeing. And with the solar savings and other projects, the way that I tend to look at this in my budgeting philosophy is that I don't like to count on the savings unless I absolutely have to, right? And so, for example, Driscoll Solar coming online, I don't have an estimate in here that says, oh, we're going to spend this much less per month once that solar array is live. Instead, we're going to monitor the overall budget performance of the school utilities profile, and it'll likely be captured in the following year when we look at the price that you're paying per kilowatt hour, and it's lower than what we expected, right? So that's how those things get captured. It's, we can, and you absolutely can say, listen, we're expecting that to save us 20 grand a month. We want to, 5 grand a month. We want to take that out of our utilities budget. Much like R&M, this is a conversation. But I am saying up front that this is what I think you're realistically going to need next year to not need a reserve fund transfer to get through.
Questions
Charles,
from
though, if they reduce their budget and know that they're backstopped by a reserve fund transfer, that's sort of the wrong incentive.
Thank you, Carol. Other questions from the
mean,
subcommittee?
that's- I'm sorry, did you ask me a question?
No, I was asking if the subcommittee, who I had called on, actually had questions. Thank you. One thing I wonder about, I know this is like, it's just a rounding error, but like, if we have all these electric cars now, where's the gasoline getting used? Like, I'll take the savings wherever we can get them.
This is a good point. And if you look at your actual expenditures for gas in FY25, they were only about $2,000, and we're suggesting 3,800. These are all formulas that we budget this way by practice. Advisory gave us this advice many years ago to start using a 3-year average times basically the latest information, unit price you have. But there is sometimes room to squish these down. And again, it is a conversation. I understand what Carol's saying, and I completely agree. We want to budget to the fullest, but we can have a conversation about what the experience is likely to be, right?
Do you have any sense of what our likely, I know that you're budgeting conservatively, and I guess what you're saying, but my question is, if you do think we're going to realize with relative certainty, X amount of savings, it would be great to be able to take that proactively.
Understood. And the way that this works is, right, we're not capturing that savings in case, and it sort of buffers against, for example, a water meter getting replaced and the cost suddenly dramatically increasing because the meter is just better at reading water, right? And I think that is up to you to make that decision as to whether or not you want to present a budget that cuts that close to the bone. I would recommend, we've had a good track record. So, past couple of years, this is what I would recommend to stay on target. But if you want to have a conversation offline with Charlie Simmons and say, hey, when did Driscoll Solar come online? How much is it going to save us? And you want us to program that in, we can have that conversation.
That would be great if we could just kick the tires and explore that a little bit. Is Charlie still here? I can't see him, but if so, yes,
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
that would be great to think about. Any last questions from the subcommittee before we move on? We still have a lot of agenda.
None for me, but I do want to say thank you for the conversation.
Absolutely. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, I really appreciate too it's been helpful to get the greater detail on utilities over the past couple of years, and just again, it's helpful to be able to have these kinds of informed conversations. So appreciate that.
Yeah, very
Absolutely
helpful.
happy to do it.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great night. Okay.
Thank you.
You too.
Thanks.
Thank
Talk
you,
soon.
Charlie.
More soon. Appreciate it. Okay, I think the next items on the agenda we're going to go to, we have specialized program and materials fee. Why don't we start with specialized program, if that's okay with you, Betsy? And that way we'll let Karen go. Go ahead, Karen.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
So just to give you a little bit of an overview. So we have been working on costing out our specialized special education programs. These are our sub-separate programs at our elementary level. And we are actually working on this across all of our programs, but these are the specific programs that had been identified earlier in the year to really look at tuitioning in students. These are programs where there had been identified as being space available. I'll talk specifically about lab because that's a little bit different, but where we're currently would be able to tuition in students. So the tuition rates that you're seeing is based on costing out the full cost of our program. So that looks at all of our staffing, our support staffing, so it's our teachers, our paras, our administrative staffing, our related service staffing, and then transportation and indirect costs. So all of that was costed out to produce the tuition rates that you are seeing on the screen. We also gave next to it some comps. So in terms of the type of program and the students that are served in our various programs, what are the comps in out of district placements? So you can just see comparisons across the board. So in terms of the lab program specifically, so Winthrop House, and this is particularly at our middle school, in which, as many of you know, this is the second year of that program. And so that program is growing, but we certainly have the ability to tuition in students there. Same as our Adaptive Learning Center, we needed to add another classroom last year. And so again, we've got a new classroom there. And so we have 3 classrooms and we have the ability to tuition in students. Our language and academic homework program, that is our lab program, which is at Driscoll. So the Adaptive Learning Center is at Lincoln. The Winthrop House Middle School program is at Driscoll and at the high school. And then the language and academic home-based program is at Driscoll. That program is pretty enrolled right now. However, one of the reasons why we looked at the lab program is, as many of you know, there is classroom availability. So there is the ability to expand that program, which would require an addition of staff, whereas currently our Adaptive Learning Center and Winthrop House would not require any additional, potentially, certainly don't require any additional teaching staff in terms of expanding. And while we do have limited space in the lab program in certain grades, that's probably the place that's most enrolled at the district level. So the goal was, as many of you are aware, these tuition rates are presented to the school committee and they get approved by the school committee. And then the district would begin working with our fellow public school districts to market and let people know that we would be accepting students for tuitioning in. Obviously, we've got in-district work to do in terms of just process and procedure and readiness, but that would be the plan. And so the goal, although we've certainly, and this is certainly, has happened over the course of the year, we have people reach out to always ask, do we tuition in? The goal would be that we would start accepting students for the FY27 school year in these programs. Any questions or any things yeah, Sarah.
So I can imagine finances are the most important, of course. I can imagine that there are other reasons why this is to our benefit. And I'd love for you to just sort of quickly add those to the conversation. That, some of our programs, they are small enough that I think it would actually benefit the program to make it a little bit larger.
Yep.
Some of our programs, the cohort, it's important for those kids to have like more of a cohort so that they're socializing. Could you just go over those?
Yeah. So I think you mentioned many of them in terms of, yes, there is benefit in terms of the socialization aspect, the cohorting aspect. You can do many different things when you have sort of a cohort and like cohort. So you can do a lot more sort of matching. I also think our programs, we run outstanding in district programming. There are many districts, certainly I've been in, districts outside of Brookline where districts have tuitioned in for many years. It brings, different diversity and really has sort of mutual benefit both for the district and obviously for the sending district.
Donna, why don't you go ahead? I think your next question. You're on mute.
Thank you so much. Karen, thank you. Thank you for putting this together. I know it's an incredible amount of work. But I want to say I'm so excited, not necessarily about the financial aspect, which would be great, but primarily because we can help more students, even outside of Brooklyn. And I think that's really incredible to expose students who have needs to some of the amazing work that we're doing in these programs. I am hoping you can answer a couple of questions. One is, are there any projections on, or have you built any projections on how many students you'd like to see us tuitioning in each of the programs? I'm also curious, and I came on late because of work, and so I missed the part of the conversation, which I assume was about the Lincoln playground. I imagine that expanding the Adaptive Learning Center might have some implications for the Lincoln playground. So I just wanted to ask about that. And then I also wanted to ask whether, if we have to make room for additional students, for example, in the lab program from Brookline, how that would work if we're tuitioning in students.
Yeah, great. So a couple of things. Obviously, we're going to start this slowly. We have looked at numbers within the program. And I think for the Adaptive Learning Center, and again, so one of the things that I think is important for people to understand is, even within our own programs, your class size is really based on students' profiles and level of need. And so you really are, and that's very dynamic. So you're always looking at that aspect. So, DESI sets are not to exceed by size. And then, space, staffing, level of complexity will really determine what is an appropriate grouping of students for any one teacher in a program. And that shifts from year to year, and that can shift, during the year. Students move, students may step down to a less restrictive program, students may need something more restrictive. So again, it's a very dynamic, fluid process. In terms of numbers, and again, this will be over the year, and again, based on our capacity and ability to bring students in. Our Adaptive Learning Center, we could probably assume somewhere between 4 to 6 students across all 3 classrooms, but really depending again on the profile of the student. But 6 would be the maximum. It would probably be more like 4 students over the course of the next year. That's the same for Winthrop House Middle School. And actually the high school. And again, that depends on grades. So we have grades and where we wouldn't be able to take students in. So a lot of it is also going to depend on, what the referral is, right? What grade the student is, and if it matches where we may have opening. For lab, again, in some of our grades, we could probably take 1, maybe 2 students next year with where we are currently. So lab is much more of a looking at what is the referral capacity. The lab programs, as you can see, there are very few out-of-district programs that serve the profile of students in lab, which is for students with specific learning disabilities, dyslexia. And so, as you can see, there's Landmark, which is in Beverly, right, which is certainly, very far, and Learning Prep, which serves students with language-based needs, but is actually different in terms of profile. And so that is an area where there's probably the greatest need. And so we'd need to really look over the spring to look at what would be, once we've marketed and advertised, what would be the referral capacity to really look at, are we opening up another section of lab? So that's going to be a more complex process in terms of lab, just based on, again, when we open this up to districts, what do our numbers look like? And does it make sense? And at what point we do that? But certainly on the other 2, for the ALC and for Winthrop House, there is capacity to start, reviewing referrals and thinking about taking students in slowly as we enter into the new school year.
Thank you, Karen. And I'm sorry I'm not on camera, but is there any thoughts about whether there might be like sort of unanticipated expenses? And I'm thinking about the playground at Lincoln for the Adaptive Learning Center, Or, you know, it also occurred to me at Driscoll, we heard a lot last spring about the loss of a vice principal there. So in terms of capacity, in some of these spaces, might there be unanticipated expenses?
Not at this point. I mean, certainly, you know, I think you raised the playground piece at the ALC and at Lincoln. I don't know, you know, in terms of, you know, just something to think about in terms of, you know, not just because we're tuitioning students. Obviously, that's an area of need for all students. Other than that, no, I don't think there are any right now unanticipated. Well, I wouldn't know, right, because they're unanticipated. But I don't think there's anything as we think about it. And again, having been in a district where we have tuitioned in, so I have some experience with doing it. I don't believe there's things that we haven't thought about that, you know, could be. And, you know, similarly in just as when we tuition, when we send students out, sometimes students come with additional needs that might be over and above this tuition. So if a particular student came in and needed additional staffing, that would be over and above tuition, which is very similar to how it is in the out-of-district world. And so we would, at the student level, that would really be factored in terms of, you know, sometimes you need some additional staffing for a 6-week period, for example, just to settle a student in. And so that would get factored in after the fact.
Okay, thank you so much, Karen.
Pleasure.
I'm gonna ask a question, then I'll call on you, Sarah. Thank you, Karen, for this. Maybe I missed it, but was there a reason that RISE and TLC aren't presented?
Yes. These were the three initial, as I said, in terms of where we really had space and capacity. We don't have space and capacity right now in either RISE or TLC. We are actually doing the same exercise for both of those, but that's really why we started with these three. And those programs, particularly RISE, pretty much runs in, you know, with pretty robust sort of program capacity right now.
Okay, and then could you just describe for me, if you could, like that you mentioned that as you're creating the costs, the tuition, you are including indirect costs. Are you including like the fully loaded cost of the salary? Like, are we including benefits and all of those things? Like, so, okay, and like all the building, like, so it's not just fringe benefits, all the sort of the indirect costs of running the district overall too? Like
So
utilities that we just heard so much about and other things.
So generally with this, it's indirect program costs and then an administrative overhead. So all of that was included in the cost out.
Okay. Is there like a formula that the state provides to help people walk through this, or you just, everyone does it their own way, and does it get audited? How is this, like, is there any sort of after the fact checking on it, or how does that work?
So the state, when special ed programs create their rates, there is a spreadsheet with with what you can include in it. And so we certainly use that as sort of our guideline for creating this.
Okay, thank you. Sarah?
I don't know enough about this, so I wondered if you just explained to me, you do have a feeling in yourself about how big a program can get, which classroom can be at what number. That all gets documented somewhere, right? Like, so that should a family want to contest a decision or something, we have it documented?
No, I mean, not necessarily in terms of, because as I said, it's pretty fluid and dynamic. And so, even, referrals are often based on, cohort, on peer matches, which is very similar to what we experience when we look for out-of-district placements. So there's so many factors that would come into whether a student is an appropriate fit for a program. So, certainly you would provide the reasoning for that, but there might be a myriad of reasons why a student is an appropriate fit and might not be an appropriate fit. So that would be a very individualized process of decision making, which would be, transparent and communicated with families and sending districts.
Okay, thank you.
I'm gonna make a motion to recommend the proposed rates to the full committee for adoption. Is there a second?
Yes, with enthusiasm.
Great. Jesse, I see your hand is up. Is this a question before we vote?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I was just wondering how we were able to get our tuitions for all three programs lower than anybody else's. Is that economy of scale? Probably not, because ALC, you know, you maybe have 2 spots available or 3 spots. I'm not sure about Winthrop and Lab. So can you explain how, you know, this looks really tantalizing. You know, if someone's looking at these other programs and looks at what Brookline may advertise, why is it so much cheaper than what we're predicting it's going to cost?
Are you asking why our rates somewhat lower than out of district rates?
Well, they're not somewhat, they're substantially lower.
Well,
Like, you know, for the ALC, I mean, it's either 10,000 or
mhm.
5,000. So yeah, 15,000. So I'm saying it's a lot of money. So I'm just saying it's like 10%. I'm just wondering, you know, is it because of I mean, it can't be scale. So I mean, are we just more economical? Are those, like, for example, if someone,
Well, I think there's economy of scale, which if you're a standalone private school, you don't have the sort of economies of a large district in certain, you know, things like your overhead, your utilities, your health insurance, all of those sorts of things. So I do think there are economies of scale that public school districts have that your private standalone schools do not.
okay, and for example, for the ALC or Cotting, BC Campus or Kennedy, about the same size as our ALC, or are they vastly different? Meaning
They're vastly different.
vastly different. Larger?
Larger, yep.
Okay.
we're
Jesse,
gonna
are
vote.
you asking because you're wondering whether we should be increasing our rates?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, like, you know, if BC Campus is vastly larger and requires 125,000 a year, and we're charging 110 for a really good program that we have, there's, you know, just trying to understand why the difference. Because even if it was fairly close, for a family that lives, you know, nearby in Cambridge or Somerville or whatever, and can't get over to, you know, BC Campus closes out or whatever, and Brooklyn, they find out
I
that
don't think people are price shopping, Jesse, the way you're considering
No,
this. but-
and I think one of the things that's also important to understand, Jesse, is those programs are all considered public day programs, and our programs are considered substantially separate programs. And so there's a different degree of intensity of need for a student who is in a substantially separate program in district, which means they are still able to have inclusive opportunities, and be part of a general education environment to the best of what they're able to do. Whereas your out of district schools, it's a higher level of restrictiveness from an IEP perspective than a substantially separate program. So you would expect a higher level of intensity and complexity of students who are needing to go out of district versus a student who can be in an in-district program, but in a substantially separate program. So you're dealing with a different level of intensity and complexity, which would account for, you know, staffing rates, type of staffing, type of related service pieces. So there's a difference in, from an IEP perspective, in your profile and complexity of need of students that we would be serving in district versus a student who might need to go out of district who can't be in a less restrictive placement like a substantially separate program.
got it. Thank you.
Okay, let's take the vote. Jesse, how do you vote?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Donna?
Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, yeah, yes.
Okay, and I vote yes as well. So I think we'll put this on the next full school committee agenda for adoption. Thank you, Karen.
Sure.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is materials fee. I actually have a presentation, Betsy, that's,
Oh, sure.
you all got this handout, which gives you the sort of the summary, but I have a little bit more of an extensive presentation, and I'm going to apologize in advance because you all know how much I hate running over, but this was a massive agenda tonight, and so
Sure is. Yeah, it sure is.
we're working our way through. We're on our last item for the agenda. Let me find the share button. So Did I hear someone talking?
No, you're good.
Okay, I thought I heard someone saying something. So this is some of the background on materials fee. I'm gonna keep it off of presentation mode so that I can still see you all instead of being blinded by the view. So this is a little bit of the background of what we're going to be talking about tonight, which is the 3-year materials fee proposal. So the last time that we took this up, or I'll say the most recent that we took this up, time that we took this up seriously, which was in 2023. Afterwards, Susan and I met with the materials fee liaisons and we agreed to propose 3% for the next 2 years, which would be for 25 and 26. Or at least to propose that to the school committee for adoption, which the school committee accepted. And that would give Susan time to understand sort of more of the overall PSB financial model, how materials fee works within that, and then come back in 2026 for FY27, which is what we're doing now. And at the time, it was a great meeting. We really talked about that we had this shared goal across all of us, which was a fee that was transparent and that everyone understood sort of how it was derived and that it was predictable so that people weren't feeling surprised year to year. I think that a lot of, and especially last year, as I know people communicated very clearly, is the stress of surprise for them. So some of the key sort of findings that have happened since then, one is that the fees are important to the overall balance of the PSB finances and that they haven't kept pace with expenditures. So this next slide I'm going to show you.
Can I just ask a quick question
Yeah.
before you move on?
Yeah.
Material free liaisons who are those people? They're
Members of the staff.
got it.
Yeah.
Who utilize the materials fee program or not necessarily?
I don't know that they're necessarily current, but they're at least current or former. And the ones that are now are current. I believe all 3 of them are current.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So here's the proposed materials fee model. And I know this is going to be a lot for people, so I'm going to walk you through this a little bit and help you understand what's going on. So this is actually, for those of you who were around in 2023, it's an updated version of that spreadsheet. And so what you see is that there's the first column is fiscal year, and then the fee is the second column. And you see the percent increase from the prior year. There is a line drawn between 25, 26 and 26, 27 because 25, 26, as we know, this is actual. Everything that's above this line is what the school committee has voted. And below the line is the proposal that we're going to discuss tonight. And so you can see that this most recent year, the current year, the fee for one student is $3,535. It's a 3% increase from the prior year. And students, in addition to a second and more students, get a 10% discount. The proposal for the future years you can see and you received earlier. So for next year is 3909, which is a 10.6% increase. And again, so for 2 students, they would maintain the 10% discount, and for 3 or more students would be 20%. For 27, 28, the proposal is 4165, which is a 6.6% increase. And for 28, 29, it's 4433, which is a 6.4% increase. Now, the generation of these numbers is not coincidental. It ties to the average total expenditures per in-district pupil from 3 years prior. And the reason it's 3 years prior is because that's basically the most recent data that DESE provides. And so this is historical data, and it's because there's this 3-year lag. So like 15, if you look at like 2011, 2012, the year that that's released is 2014, 2015. And if you compare it, then this number compared to this, the 2565 is 16% of this. This is all really complicated, and I appreciate that. But what you see historically is that before COVID, there was a 16% average, pre-COVID average of the materials fee, the lagged materials fee compared to the in-district pupil expenses. And the interesting thing about this, I won't say it's interesting, but the important thing about this is that it ties to this idea of this being related to the non-salary costs associated with the students. And then After COVID, though, the rate actually dropped substantially. So after COVID, and I tried to draw these boxes to help make this clear, the rate was 13.7%. And so you see this difference. Part of that is because our per pupil expenditures, or almost significantly, the reason is our per pupil expenditures in district increased substantially in this time, 20% actually, from fiscal year 20 to fiscal year 21. That's the big notable change there. And so you see a significant change there. And so if we look at our proposed year for next year, what the math is, it's taking the 24 FY24 in-district pupil expenditures, and it starts to incrementally increase them towards the historic average. So we were at, as I say, 16.0% pre-COVID, 13.7% after. So if we go to 14.5 of this year, that's the 3909. If we go to 15% of this number, that's the 4165. And then if we go to 28,602 of the current year, that's in 3 years, the 4433. Now, I just want to highlight that obviously we have, I don't want to highlight, but I want to explain to you that these numbers here, the 25,749 fiscal year 23, these are all published on the DESE website. There's just a link you go to and they give you this number. DESE hasn't published any numbers since 2023. As I said, there's a lag. And so 24 and 25, these are the district submissions that just haven't been published yet. So but they are included here to be able to do this. And then the 28,602 for the current year, obviously we have no way of calculating that. So this number is just a 3% increase on last year's number as an estimate. So does everyone follow the math of how we're approaching this?
The table was really helpful to understand it all.
I hope so. It's really complicated, and
Wait,
I have
I'm
some
I do
So,
have a
sorry.
examples to walk through. Go ahead.
I'm not sure. I want to make sure I'm following the math.
Yeah.
First of all, what did you said something about non-salary expenses.
So historically, as you look at PSB expenses, obviously the vast majority of it is in salary expenses. And
Right.
typically it's been about 15% of our total budget or so. It varies year to year, is non-salary.
Correct.
And
Okay.
so that's where this sort of ties to. It's interesting that earlier during the Q2 report, Susan mentioned that this year it's much lower because of the budgeting exercise we went through. Unfortunately, it reduced it significantly, but typically it is around 15%.
Okay, so you're saying that's the tuition percentage of the total expenses that are non-salary expenses. But and the average total expense per pupil, according to DESE, obviously includes everything like that's all in, like including salary. I just want to make sure I'm covering.
Correct. And that's why we take a fraction of it, right? We're sort of working on taking a fraction of it.
And so can you explain again? So how did you got to the, for example, for 26, 27, 3909 related back to?
That's 14.5% of the 26,959.
But shouldn't it be that plus like 3, like if it's in the future years, shouldn't it be, aren't we expecting it to go up like that 3% or whatever that you did for?
These, because there's a 3-year lag, we actually know, like this 26,959, that was our per pupil expenditure in FY24. So we have the per pupil expenditure for 24 and 25. The only one I'm estimating is 26. So that's why I had that one increase at a 3%.
I guess what I'm saying is, though, don't we want it to be 14.5% of what it's going to cost the per pupil spend in 26, 27?
I hear what you're saying. And I think that like there is a lag to this. This is all somewhat of a proxy, right? Like
Yes,
we're trying to
yeah.
come up with something that's sort of, again, predictable, fair, understandable. At the time, I didn't have, like when I was first doing this, I built in a 3-year lag because that was the best data we had for in-district pupil expenditures. Like staff had to specially calculate these numbers to, because it's not provided by DESE for us. And they haven't theoretically been validated by DESI, right? There could be a small change here. But again, all of this is sort of building a model that we can use to help create predictability, explainability for staff and for everyone.
Okay, got
The
it.
other thing I want to note about this is that there's a goal here to present a three-year, just like we've been doing in other areas where, like, for example, in BEEP, we presented a 3-year plan. Here also, we're going into this idea of trying to create a 3-year cycle so that there's predictability. People don't have to, they might say, okay, well, it's going to be, now I know what's going on for the next 3 years. So they have some of that ability to look forward. Are there other questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go
Mariah.
ahead.
I just wanted to back up for a second. If materials fee students come into the district after the budget's been set and we have empty seats, right? It's by an empty seat kind of thing. If a particular, I don't know, 4th grade classroom has 2 chairs that are empty, it's given as an option, I guess, like to teachers with students from out of district, that they could pay a fee to have their child sit in one of those seats. Is that right?
I don't know if I would use those exact words, but I would say it's directionally accurate. Yeah.
Right. And so I guess what's the advantage of using this DESI number that we provide, where, for example, if those 2 chairs stayed empty, there's no impact. But
Well, there's materials that the students have to use. Some things are truly per pupil expenses. The salary, right? That teacher in that classroom might not be, but there are other things which are relating to the actual student.
right, but the amount, if we were to tease it out, wouldn't the like average total expenditure for each student in the an extra kid, an extra student sitting in a chair be vastly 25 grand a year?
That's why we're talking about 3,900 instead of 27. We're not talking about charging them these fees. We're talking about this down here.
Oh, right. No. I understand that, but a slide or two ago, we talked about predictability, and people have been assuming we're using 3% every year, and suddenly we're tripling it next year, at least as a proposal. Seems, like a huge abrupt change rather than the predictability thing.
When we talked about this with them 2 years ago, we talked about this idea of like coming to them, like this was the year that we were going to come and talk about a model. So you're right. I mean, it is a change, but again, as we think about this, there's the question of how do we ensure that we are providing overall sort of the contribution that materials fee provides to the overall budget, and how we are going to be able to sustain the overall program we have with our mix of revenue funds. But just to your point, I think it was when it was 23 and we were talking about this for 24, there was I brought the proposal at the time, which was to align this. And the school committee, my recollection is finance, it failed on a tied vote at finance, and full school committee chose to do 3.5% instead. So you're right, there's certainly a history of school committee rejecting this type of proposal, if that's like, it's not to say you're right, but I will agree with you that there is this other trend.
Right, and I guess the other question I have is that we don't know what's going to happen with negotiations, but the 500, the 400 and something dollars, whatever it is, additional cost, if a teacher's salary isn't going up the same amount, this could actually put them in a squeeze. Teachers who are currently with students in the program.
Why don't I look at some of the impact on participants, and you can see what some of this looks like for people. So this is our current enrollment in 26. You can see that there's 139 families total that participate. 87 of them have 1 student, 45 have 2, 5 have 3, and 2 have 4 students. So there's a total of 200 students. So if you look at what would happen in, like, right now, year 1, there's the 35 that they pay right now. And then next year you can see the increase, 374, then the year after that 250, and then the year after that just under 270. So you can see the total growth. For 2 children, the current system is that there's a 90% discount for child 2. So you can see for children 2, 3, and 4, that stays in place. And you can see the dollar amount, 711, 487, and then 509.
That's the annual fee, right, Mariah? Just for clarity.
These are so you can see the total over the total for their 2 children. Yes, that's the
For
annual
1
fee.
year. Yeah, it'd be for 1
Right.
year of
Yeah,
tuition.
exactly. It's the total of the 2 children.
Right.
Then for 3, I'm just showing you. So we've got right now people with 3 kids pay just under $9,900 because they get currently they get a discount of 90% on their 3rd kid, but in this proposal they get an 80% discount. So that actually reduces their increase to 6.6%, 6.6, 6.4. And then for people who have 4 kids, again, there's a discount of 80% instead. And so the first year is relatively small for them because of that 80% discount. And then it increases again at the same 6.6 and 6.4.
I think it's actually a 20% discount, but you're showing the 80% of the tuition.
Right. Sorry. Yeah, I was trying to make it easy for me to do
I could
math.
see why. Yeah, I could see why.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So that sort of shows you how it flows for different people in terms of year-on-year increase in dollar amounts, depending on how many kids they have. And then this chart shows you thinking about how these fees align with or compare with real estate taxes that we pay.
Right.
So there's 2 different ways. There's 2 different ways that I calculated the property value equivalent. There's different ways, and I can talk more about that if you're interested, but basically there's a range here. So currently, if you have, for example, 1 student, you could say, well, that's sort of the equivalent of someone who has property that's between $700,000 and $930,000 in worth of how much taxes they pay. And all the way up to 4, it's between 1.6 and 2.4 million. And you can see this all the way down through. It doesn't actually change drastically every year. So you look at it, and my takeaway from this was that materials fee participants contribute at similar levels to residents based on these real estate tax ranges that you see. And also my takeaway was that the rates don't meaningfully change that going forward. The increase in rates still places them squarely sort of within I will say often on the low end, although not always on the low end, but like certainly you could think about it like, for example, a property value equivalent of in the low 800s for a property in Brookline is probably on the low end. But again, I think that like it shows you that they are contributors. This is this isn't some sort of freeloading situation. It's a benefit that they're contributing to. Just like people contribute to health insurance at a fraction, that we all contribute to our benefits that we get to our employers. And it seems like it is not an excessive or onerous contribution. It seems like it's relatively in the right sort of range.
Well, I mean, but don't
Go ahead.
they pay property taxes and they're like, if they live in Needham, they're paying property taxes and they're
That's true. They do pay property taxes in their other community, possibly. I mean, I don't know exactly where they live or what they pay for, but
yeah,
I guess there seems to be, I think there's historically sort of this trend, this idea that like there's not this isn't a meaningful amount or it's not a reasonable amount. And I think the point of this analysis is to say that it really is a reasonable amount. They are contributing at sort of a fair level to the resource that they're using in town. In terms of revenue impact, the projected revenue for 26 based on the enrollment we have is about 685. It's slightly different from what's in Susan's actual revolver projections that we got for Q2, but it's roughly approximate. If you look at fiscal year 27, it would bring in about 70,000 more. So that is a 10% increase. And then you see the increases about another 50,000 for 28, and then another 50,000 on top of that in 29. So overall, over the 3 years, it's about $170,000 increased revenue. And should we choose to make a motion, I drafted a proposed motion.
How does if you look at the prior slide,
This one?
yeah, so what are teacher salary increase percentages going for the next couple of years? Just if we knew.
Well,
Or-
we're in negotiations right now, so we don't have that
But
information.
I mean in general, they're not probably not going up 6 to 8% a year.
I mean, I think that people's health insurance is going up 12% a year and their salaries aren't going up 12% a year either, right, Jesse? Unfortunately,
Yeah.
what we find is that like I personally think it's more meaningful to look at the dollar amount increase versus comparing like 1% of a million versus 10% of $10. Like you would say, oh, well, 10% of $10 is more impactful than 1% of a million. So I think looking at the actual dollar amounts might be more useful than looking at the percents. But I don't mean to diminish that like it's a relatively large 1 year jump. It's certainly if you compare it to
No,
historically.
it's very large, sure. Especially as you say, other things are increasing in cost at the same time. And, you know, to propose this at this juncture in 2025, you know, in 2026 could startle a lot of people, I guess. I guess the question would be if we converted the average total expenditures for this DESI number to a marginal cost of having 1 or 2 more students in each classroom or something, what would the rates look like then?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
I'm saying that if we were to convert this DESI number, which is the total according to DESI that it costs us to actually run a class for a student, and then we have an extra chair, you know, a student who's out of the district. Now we have an extra chair. Everything's been set. And it's true, we'll have to put a few more materials, you know, and if we had 20 kids, now we have 21 kids. So 1 over 20 is like what, 4%, 5% in terms of the extra materials cost, you know, one more book, one more this, one more that. You add all that up, does that really come anywhere close to 25 grand a year? Or is it more like 3,000 a year or something? In which case the comparison between the tuition fee, which really is the materials fee, and the total expenditures per student seems like a sort of a lopsided comparison. I mean, it's been used for a lot of years here. I see that before I joined.
It
But-
hasn't been used, Jesse. This is something that I've been trying to explain to people how it's connected. And I think that based on what you're saying, I feel like you're not understanding that the whole point is we're trying to see how we associate the non-salary costs of the district. So
I like where Jesse's going with that because it's with a lot of empathy for thinking about what, you know, what the true cost is to families. Jesse, I just do have to point out that while an extra student in a classroom, when they enter the program, might not have a lot of additional expenses, we then have that student all the way through 12th grade, however it shakes out each year afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. Well, it means, I mean, in theory, that it just means we have one filled seat that we wouldn't have had. It would have been empty all the way through. Right, so that like the 20 kids in that cohort became 19, and then this other kid came in, and that kid stays with that cohort, you're right, till 12th grade, let's say. So instead of it being 19 children the whole time, where we're paying the same infrastructure costs, utility costs, teacher salaries the same, whether it's 19 or 20, having the one child carry through all the way, filling a seat that would have been empty, that's true.
but
They
Jesse,
still-
it's not the same infrastructure costs. I mean, like
Okay.
I'll just be like, you know, a student flushes a toilet, that increases water use. That's just some very like minuscule example
Minuscule,
of like,
right.
there's always incremental costs associated with additional wear and tear, additional use of supplies, additional use of like a whole bunch of things that I guess like I'm not saying that like I'm not saying that this is the exact model and I assist you have to follow this. But to sort of to diminish the idea that there is no incremental cost or that they're like, you know, there's like, you know, wear and tear on books. There's a whole bunch of different things that happen, whether it's a non-resident student or a resident student. That's why we have non-personnel costs because they exist and they're real.
Right, so I guess my question is the 3% a year increase somehow not kept pace as you had on slide 2, I think, of your presentation? where it said something about, I think it was the second bullet, one up from there, Mariah, I can't read it, it's too small, but I mean, if you go up one slide,
This one?
I think so. Yeah, MFEs have not kept.
You
again,
can see what the percent annual increase is. We had a 20% annual increase in per pupil expenditures a couple of years ago. Like clearly 3%, when we have a 20% increase in students, like a 3% increase doesn't cover that.
Can I also add something?
Please.
I want to disagree with you slightly, Jesse, or maybe add something that you're not thinking about, which is that seat might be empty in September, but we are required as a district to take students that move into our district at any time. So, for example, you have a school like FRR that has a lot of transition, and Lawrence, depending on a lot of times the international climate. But so that seat may or may, I mean, it might be empty at the start of the school year, but it might not, it may, that doesn't ensure that it would have been empty at the end of the school year. And so I don't know. I don't think it's just, I just don't think it's that black and white, in other words.
I don't understand that, because a teacher in the district, Donna, signs on to start the year, most teachers, okay, unless there's like something happened to a teacher and you have to replace them mid-year. And their kids probably were in some other school where they live. So the normal situation, I think, would be that a teacher from, I don't know, Newton has a job in Brookline Public Schools, and at the beginning of the year, they're interested in having their child come with them. So they find out about this program and they register their student because there's a seat. I don't know what it has to do with.
But you're saying there's an empty seat and that seat would have gone empty all year. And I'm disagreeing with that portion, because it may or may not have gone empty all year, because we take students when they move into Brookline. I'm not talking about materials fee students. I'm talking about residents. Yeah. So that part I disagree with.
Right. Yeah. In that case, you have to add another chair in the room because you have to provide.
Right. So I'm just disagreeing with that particular part of the statement. I don't think it's as clean as how you're depicting it. I also wanted to ask, if I can, unless you want to continue this conversation, about the slide that you had up with all the beautiful colored boxes, Mariah.
Yeah. Do you want me to put it back up? I was just, I took it down so I could see you all.
It doesn't matter. And I guess my question is, I'm still not understanding why we wouldn't use more like actual numbers. If we're truly, if the intent of materials fee, if the intent of developing the cost of the materials fee program, and we might decide that we want to charge less because, you know, it's important to us for our educators to have their students in the schools, or for other town employees to have their kids in the schools. But isn't there, I just wonder if we shouldn't be using the actual, something closer to the actual cost of the materials fee as the basis for the modeling. Does that make sense? Can you do the thing where you
like get the actual cost?
I'm saying, like, you know how there's that 3-year lag or whatever, like you said, like, what, can't we get a number that's closer to the real cost instead of the lagging cost? Because our costs are increasing year over year.
So we have it. I mean, Mariah showed it, Donna. It just hasn't been certified by DESE yet. We know each year.
Right. But I thought that in that bottom left-hand corner for future years, like FY 26, 27, 27, 28, you're basing the price on like the 3-year lag.
Only because that's the data we have.
Right.
Like and part of the nice thing about the 3 years, the positive benefit of it is it lets us do this kind of future like planning. So we could originally I did it because that was the best data I had, the most recent I had. But now the thing that I see that makes it a benefit is it lets us actually forecast out 3 years as well.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess what I'm just want to be as like, I don't know. I have to think about what like why that's bugging me, but I think it's because we might make a decision to reduce the cost, right? Like as a committee, we might decide. Anyway, I have to think about it more.
Mhm.
The end of my comment.
So it's really late and I apologize. We're 50 minutes past the what should be the appropriate end of the meeting. And I want to get a sense from the subcommittee of, do you want to keep talking about this, or have we talked about it enough and you want to think about it?
We do
would
have
be,
a, sorry.
I was just going to say, I am not ready necessarily to vote tonight to recommend it, but I am very close to voting to recommend it.
We do have a little bit of a time issue here, is that educators have asked that they're able to plan ahead. And so we did want to try to do this quickly. I don't know if the committee would feel comfortable with this, but is there any chance that this is an important enough issue that we want to bring it to the full school committee for discussion?
We need to come to the full school committee with a recommendation. The committee will discuss no matter what we do, but the subcommittee needs to come to the full committee with a recommendation. That would be my, I mean, in theory, we could not, but that's what our job is to do that. And I would like us to do that. But I agree with you, Sarah, that we should, but we need to be respectful of the desire of staff to have both on the town side and on the school side, because both sides are eligible to have a sense of what this would look like. So we could theoretically schedule a one-off meeting to discuss this further, perhaps like next week or early the week after.
Right, I mean, I think we have another finance subcommittee meeting February 4th, which is the day before 2 school committee meetings from now, right?
But that's 3 weeks from now, Jesse.
Well, I know, but we only have, but the next school committee meeting is next week. And
Right, I'm saying we could schedule a meeting like next week was my hope.
I'm so sorry. I had a hard stop 20 minutes ago and I'm really late for somewhere that I need to be.
Yeah.
So I would like to
It's
move.
my fault. I'm sorry.
No. I would like to move that we meet especially to discuss this.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's a good idea. Let's do that.
Okay, we don't even need to make it a motion. We'll just make that plan. Betsy, will you follow up with people afterwards to see what we can schedule for
Sure.
before the next school committee meeting?
So before the 22nd.
Yeah, which I know
Okay.
is crazy, but we're gonna make it happen if we can.
Yeah,
Okay.
let's try.
Yeah,
It's
let's
worth-
try.
I mean,
And hopefully
Is
maybe
is your presentation part of the meeting minutes?
it will be. It'll
Yeah,
be
'cause
added.
I was looking, but okay, thank you.
Yep.
Well, Mariah, I do want
I'm
to
gonna
say
say
thank
goodbye.
you for
I'm
the,
so sorry.
bye,
Yeah,
Sarah.
no worries. Thank you, Sarah.
I
Apologies
just-
for the late hour.
Before we close, I just want to say thank you, because I imagine, that was an immense amount of work. And
Yeah, and I think, I mean, I just want to say, like, first off, I appreciate a lot of the communication from the materials fee liaisons. They're wonderful people to work with. And I think everyone has this, there's this tension between trying to keep this as affordable as possible and make sure that we can overall support the district finances.
and have you had any feedback from them, or this is the first view that they will have seen of the proposed model?
Bella's been speaking to them
Okay.
directly about it. So, yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night.
Appreciate it. Bye-bye.